I stood frozen on Sunny's doorstep, rain dripping from my jacket, my heart pounding like it was warning me to turn back. 2 years since our divorce, and suddenly, out of nowhere, she'd called me. "Come for dinner, Victor. We need to talk." Her voice had been calm, too calm. When she opened the door, it was like stepping into a memory I wasn't ready to relive. Same cinnamon candle scent, same hallway mirror we bought in Brighton, same warm lighting. But then I noticed them, a pair of men's shoes by the door. Expensive, polished, not mine. Dinner felt staged. She asked questions, but her eyes kept flicking toward the living room, and then I heard it. A laugh. His laugh. It sliced through me like a blade. Deep, confident, painfully familiar. I'd heard that laugh at family barbecues, football matches, late-night talks about loyalty and blood. Alex, my cousin. In that moment, everything clicked. This wasn't just dinner. It was a trap wrapped in nostalgia, and sitting in the next room was the man who'd betrayed me in a way I never saw coming. I never thought I'd find myself driving down that quiet street again, the one that led straight to the house Sunny and I used to share. The rain had stopped, but the air was still damp, and my windshield glistened with the reflections of the streetlights. It had been 2 years since the divorce. 2 years since I'd stood on that porch, walked through that door, smelled the familiar cinnamon candles she always burned in autumn. Yet here I was, my heart thudding in my chest like it was warning me to turn around. I kept replaying her message in my head. "Hey, I've been thinking. Would you like to come over for dinner? Just to talk?" It was simple, almost innocent, but the weight of it was anything but. We hadn't spoken in so long. Why now? Why this? I remember sitting with Jorge at the cafe when I got the message. He took one look at my face and said, "Don't even think about it, Victor. She'll mess with your head again." I laughed it off, but he wasn't wrong. Sunny had a way of pulling me back in, even when I swore I was done. I typed back anyway. "All right, when?" Her reply came within seconds. "Saturday, 7 p.m., same place." Same place. That house wasn't just a house. It was the battlefield where our love was built and destroyed. Saturday evening, I stood in front of my mirror adjusting my shirt for what felt like the 10th time. I told myself I didn't care how I looked, but I still fixed my collar, ran my hands through my hair, made sure my jacket sat just right. I wanted to look calm, in control, like the man who had moved on. My flat in Manchester was quiet, modern, practical, nothing like the home we had shared. The clock ticked loudly. Outside, the streets were slick with rain, the kind that makes everything glow like polished glass under the streetlights. I took a deep breath, grabbed my keys, and stepped into the night. The drive felt longer than I remembered. Every street corner carried a memory. Her laugh in the passenger seat, the way she used to sing out of tune, the silent drive after we signed the divorce papers. I pulled up in front of the house, and for a moment, I just sat there. It looked exactly the same. White brick walls, black front door, soft golden light spilling from the windows. It was like time had stood still, as if she'd been waiting for me to return. I didn't move. I just stared, gripping the steering wheel, feeling the weight of the past pressing down on me. Finally, I forced myself to get out of the car. Standing at the doorstep, I hesitated before ringing the bell. My reflection stared back at me from the window. Older, more tired, carrying 2 years of silence and unresolved questions. The door opened and the smell hit me first. Cinnamon candles. She still lit them. And then I saw her. Sunny. Blonde hair loosely tied, cream blouse tucked into jeans, a soft, practiced smile. "Victor," she said, almost like she was exhaling my name. "Sunny," I answered. My voice was calm, but my chest tightened. Walking inside was like stepping into a preserved memory. The hallway mirror we bought in Brighton, the rug we argued about, the pictures still on the wall. It was all the same. But then my eyes caught something that didn't fit. A pair of men's shoes by the door. Expensive, polished, definitely not mine. I tried to brush it off. Maybe a friend, maybe family, but something in my gut told me this wasn't random. She led me to the dining room. The table was set exactly like she used to. Candles lit, wine poured, napkins folded neatly. It felt staged, like a scene from the past, carefully reconstructed. "You've redecorated," I said dryly. She laughed softly. "Not really. I guess I just didn't feel the need to change anything." We sat across from each other. She asked about work, my apartment, whether I was seeing someone. I answered politely, cautiously, like stepping through a minefield. She talked about her trips, her painting, her new routines, but her eyes kept drifting toward the living room, again and again. It wasn't casual. It was like she was waiting for something to happen. "Are you expecting someone?" I finally asked. She froze for a split second, then shook her head too quickly. "No, why?" I shrugged. "You keep looking that way." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Old habits." I let it go, but my instincts were loud now. There was something or someone she wasn't telling me about. The silence between us stretched. The candles flickered. I heard a faint creak from the other room. She flinched, just slightly. I noticed. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face the way I used to when I knew she was lying about something small, like forgetting to pay a bill or losing her keys. But this wasn't small. This was deliberate. The weight in the air grew heavier with every passing second. "Victor," she finally said, her voice quieter now, "I invited you here because there are things that can't stay hidden forever." The way she said it made my skin prickle. Calm, final, like she'd already accepted the consequences of whatever was coming. My fingers tightened around the base of my wineglass. "What are you talking about, Sonny?" She didn't answer. Her gaze shifted once more toward the living room. My heart began to race. I wasn't imagining it. There was someone there. And then I heard it, a sound that sliced through the silence like a blade. A low, confident laugh. A laugh I knew. A laugh I'd grown up with. It was faint but unmistakable. My stomach twisted. I didn't say a word, but in that instant, something inside me cracked. That laugh belonged to Alex, my cousin. But that revelation would come fully later. For now, I sat in that house across from my ex-wife, realizing that dinner wasn't about nostalgia or closure. It was the beginning of something else entirely, something I couldn't yet name but could already feel sinking its claws into me. The moment that laugh echoed from the living room, something inside me shifted. My pulse started to race in a way I hadn't felt since the day Sonny and I split. I didn't even need to see him to know who it was. That laugh was carved into my memory like a scar. Alex, my cousin, the one person I would never have expected to hear in that house. The sound was brief, but it was enough to tear away whatever thin layer of calm I had been holding on to. Sonny's face gave everything away in a split second. Her smile tightened, her eyes darted toward the living room, and she swallowed hard. She tried to compose herself quickly, but I had already seen it. I sat back in my chair, my fingers gripping the stem of the wineglass as if it could anchor me. My brain scrambled for explanations. Maybe he was visiting. Maybe he dropped by unannounced. But no, the way Sonny shifted in her seat told me this wasn't some innocent coincidence. This was planned. It was deliberate. And I was the last one to know. I forced my voice to stay steady. "Who's here, Sonny?" She didn't answer right away. She just stared down at her plate, pretending to adjust her fork. "Sonny," I repeated, firmer this time. Her eyes flicked up, then away. "It's someone you know," she said quietly. "Someone I know." The sentence hit me like a slow punch. I leaned forward. "Say his name." Her throat worked as if the words were stuck. Before she could respond, footsteps came from the living room. And then he appeared. Alex, standing casually in the doorway like he belonged there. Clean-shaven, dressed in a dark shirt with the sleeves rolled up, confident as ever. His smile was faint, polite, but it carried that same quiet arrogance I remembered from our childhood. "Vic," he said, like we were meeting at a family barbecue. "Didn't expect to see you here." I froze. For a moment, it felt like time slowed. There he was, my cousin, the guy I grew up with, the one I shared summers, fights, and secrets with. The last person I expected to be standing in my ex-wife's house like he owned the place. My mouth went dry. What the hell are you doing here? I asked. He shrugged lightly, as if this was the most normal situation in the world. Sonny invited me, he replied. My gaze snapped to her. She didn't deny it. She just sat there, tense, watching us like she had no idea how to control the explosion she'd lit. The tension thickened instantly. I set my glass down, slower than I wanted to stop my hands from shaking. You invited me and him on the same night? I asked her. She opened her mouth, but Alex cut in, like he always used to. Relax, Vic. We all used to be close, remember? It doesn't have to be weird. I stared at him, disbelief turning into something darker. He'd always had that way of brushing past people's emotions like they were inconvenient details. And now he was standing in my old house with my ex-wife, acting like this was some kind of casual reunion. Sonny finally spoke. I didn't think it would be this tense. I just thought, maybe it's time we clear the air. Her voice was small, unsure. Clear the air, I repeated. Sonny, you invited your ex-husband and his cousin, who clearly is living here or something, and you thought this would be calm. Alex stepped forward and leaned against the doorway. No one's living here, Vic. But yeah, Sonny and I have been spending time together. I figured it was better if you heard it face to face. For a second, I honestly thought I misheard him. The words were calm, measured, like he was discussing the weather. But underneath, they carried a weight that crushed me. Spending time together. I looked at Sonny. She didn't deny it. Her eyes were glossy, but she didn't speak. I pushed my chair back slowly and stood up. The sound of the legs scraping against the floor cut through the air like a warning bell. You two? My voice trailed off because I couldn't even finish the sentence. Alex folded his arms, meeting my gaze directly. Yeah, he said simply. Me and Sonny. It felt like someone had driven a fist straight into my chest. Betrayal doesn't always explode. Sometimes it lands like a dull thud, then spreads like poison. I took a slow step back, scanning their faces. Sonny was trembling slightly, trying to hold herself together. Alex looked infuriatingly composed. This wasn't a sudden thing. This was something they'd prepared themselves for. I was the only one who didn't know the script. I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Wow, I said under my breath. My own cousin. Alex tilted his head. We didn't plan it, Vic. It just happened. Those 3 words, it just happened, made me want to smash something. I clenched my fists, trying to control the shaking. You've been seeing her behind my back for how long? I demanded. Sonny flinched. Alex looked at me squarely. Not behind your back. After you left. I stepped closer to him. After I left? Alex, she was my wife. My life. And you're telling me the second I stepped out, you stepped in? Sonny stood up suddenly. Stop it, both of you. Her voice cracked. This is exactly why I wanted you here. I can't live like this, hiding, pretending it's nothing. You needed to know, Victor. I stared at her. Needed to know? You could have picked 1,000 ways to tell me. But this, my voice rose. You invite me here, sit me down at the same table, and then parade him out like some big reveal? She looked down, unable to hold my gaze. Alex stepped between us slightly, not aggressively, but enough to make it clear he wasn't backing down. That move made my blood boil. I took a step toward him. You've got some nerve. He didn't flinch. Vic, it's messy, I know, but we're not enemies here. I laughed again, sharper this time. Not enemies? You're sleeping with my ex-wife, Alex. I think that qualifies. The air was electric. One wrong word and it would have turned into a fight. I could feel my pulse in my temples, my chest tight, my mind racing between rage and heartbreak. Sonny started to cry quietly. Alex's jaw clenched, but he kept his composure. You should go, Vic, he said softly, like he was doing me a favor. I stared at him, then at Sonny, and for a second, everything went blurry. The house that once felt like home now felt alien, poisoned. I grabbed my jacket, my hands unsteady, and walked toward the door. I didn't slam it, I didn't yell. I just left. As I stepped out into the cold night, the sound of the door closing behind me felt like a finality. My breath was visible in the air. My hands were shaking so hard. I shoved them into my pockets to hide it, even though no one was there to see. Betrayal doesn't always make noise. Sometimes it's just quiet footsteps walking away from the place where your trust died. The night I walked out of Sonny's house, something inside me cracked, but didn't break completely. At first, I thought I could just leave it there, let the betrayal sit quietly like an uninvited guest in the back of my mind. But betrayal doesn't fade like a bad dream. It grows, it festers. And the more I replayed that moment in my head, the way Alex stood there so casually, the way Sonny avoided my eyes, the angrier I became. I drove around for hours that night, aimlessly, my hands clenched around the steering wheel. I must have gone through the same streets 10 times without realizing it. My chest felt heavy, my throat burned, and there were moments where I honestly thought about turning the car around and confronting them right then. But I didn't. I wanted to be in control. I wanted clarity, not chaos. The days that followed were some of the most confusing of my life. Sonny tried to call twice. I didn't answer. Jorge came over one evening and found me sitting in the dark, nursing a half-empty bottle of whiskey. He didn't say, "I told you so," though he had every right to. He just sat down beside me and waited. Eventually, I started talking. The words came out in bursts. Anger, disbelief, humiliation. "He's my cousin Jorge," I kept repeating, as if saying it out loud would somehow make it less absurd. Jorge shook his head slowly. Alex was always a little too comfortable around her. I noticed it back then, but I never thought he'd cross that line. His words landed like tiny shards. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit something. Instead, I poured another drink. A week passed before I saw either of them again. I didn't plan it. It just happened. I was coming out of the grocery store when I saw them on the other side of the street. Sonny's arm looped through Alex's, both of them laughing at something on her phone. It was like a scene from a parallel universe where I didn't exist. For a second, I froze. My hands tightened around the shopping bags. My heart started pounding so loudly I could barely hear the cars passing by. I could have walked away, and maybe I should have, but I didn't. I crossed the street. They didn't see me at first. When Sonny finally noticed, her smile faltered instantly. Alex turned, his expression changing from relaxed to guarded in a heartbeat. "Victor," Sonny said, stepping slightly forward, as if she wanted to explain something. Alex didn't move. He just watched me carefully, like he was ready for a fight if it came to that. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said softly. I looked at both of them. They looked comfortable, like a couple, like everything that used to be mine was now casually theirs. "Guess the world's small," I replied coldly. Alex spoke next. "Look, man, I know this is weird, but we don't need to make it uglier than it already is." His calm tone made my blood boil. "Weird," I said slowly. "You're with my ex-wife, Alex. You were at my wedding. You were supposed to be my brother, and you call this weird?" Sonny glanced between us nervously, her fingers fidgeting with the strap of her bag. "Can we not do this here?" she whispered. "Please." But it was too late. The words were already spilling out. "How long?" I asked Alex. He didn't answer immediately. He looked at Sonny. She looked down, and that silence was my answer. "God," I muttered, stepping back. "This wasn't some accident, was it? You didn't just bump into each other one night. This has been going on for a while." Alex sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Victor, it started after you guys split. I didn't plan it. Neither did she. We just..." He trailed off as if the rest didn't matter. I stepped closer to him. "You just what? Fell in love? Slept together? Pretended blood didn't mean anything?" He met my gaze. "I care about her," he said firmly. Sonny reached out a hand toward me, tears forming in her eyes. "Victor, I never wanted it to happen this way. I didn't mean to hurt you like this." I took a step back. "But you did," I said quietly. "And the worst part is, you didn't even have the decency to tell me. You just let me walk into that house like some idiot." The people around us were starting to stare now, but I didn't care. My world had shrunk to the three of us standing on that wet pavement. Alex took a step forward, lowering his voice. Look, Vic, I know you're hurt. You have every right to be. But we can't change what's happened. We're together now, and you have to accept that sooner or later. I laughed, bitter and sharp. Accept? You want me to accept that the woman I loved and the cousin I trusted are now a couple? That everything I built is now some kind of secondhand story for you to live out? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. Sonny was crying now openly. People were pretending not to look, but they were watching. I felt like the ground had opened beneath me. All those years with her, the trust I'd had in him, it all collapsed in one brutal scene on a random street. I turned away. I couldn't stand there another second. As I walked off, I heard her call my name, but I didn't look back. If I had, I might have broken, and I wasn't ready to break in front of them. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of them together burned behind my eyelids. The way he looked at her wasn't casual. It was the way I used to look at her. That was what hurt the most. He didn't just take my wife, he took the life I thought I had left behind cleanly. I thought about confronting my family, telling them everything. But then the shame crept in. The thought of explaining to my relatives that my cousin was now with my ex-wife made my skin crawl. I didn't want their pity. I didn't want their shocked faces. I wanted to disappear. But disappearing isn't in my nature. A few days later, Sonny called again. This time I answered. Her voice was trembling. Victor, can we talk? Please, not like before. Just talk. I should have hung up. Instead, I found myself agreeing to meet her at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. When I walked in, she was already there, sitting at a corner table, hands wrapped tightly around a mug of coffee like she was trying to absorb warmth. When she saw me, her eyes softened, but there was fear in them too. We sat across from each other in silence for almost a full minute before she spoke. I know I can't undo what's happened, she said quietly. But I need you to understand that this wasn't about revenge or betrayal. It wasn't calculated. I stared at her. You expect me to believe that? You expect me to believe that the two people closest to me just accidentally fell into each other's arms? She shook her head, tears welling. I don't expect you to believe anything. I need you to hear me. I didn't interrupt her. I wanted to, but I didn't. She talked about how after the divorce, Alex had been there for her, how one thing led to another, how she never planned to fall for him. Her voice broke more than once. She looked genuinely torn, but all I could think about was the timeline, the gaps, the strange late nights during our last year together. And even though she swore it all happened afterward, doubt crawled up my spine like a cold hand. I didn't trust her. I didn't trust him. And worst of all, I didn't trust myself anymore. When I left the cafe, I realized something. I wasn't just dealing with betrayal. I was standing at the edge of a decision that would define what kind of man I'd be after this. I could either let this consume me completely, or I could find a way to face it. But one thing was certain. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't realize how much of myself I had lost until everything went quiet. After the confrontation, after seeing them together on the street, after that final conversation in the cafe, the world slowed down. It wasn't peace. It was that strange silence after a storm when everything is broken but still standing. I went through the motions like a ghost. Work, sleep, eat, avoid family gatherings, pretend to be fine. But beneath the surface, a war was still happening inside me. It wasn't just about Sonny or Alex anymore. It was about me, about who I had become through all of this. For weeks, I avoided everyone. Jorge was the only one who wouldn't leave me alone. He'd show up unannounced with takeaway, sit on my couch, and force me to talk even when I didn't want to. You can't bottle this forever, he said one night, handing me a beer. At some point, you've got to decide if you're going to keep bleeding over the same wound or let it scar. I didn't answer him then, but his words stayed with me. Bleeding or scarring. That was the choice, wasn't it? The first real shift happened during a family gathering I couldn't avoid. It was my aunt's birthday, and everyone was there, including Alex and Sonny. They didn't come together, at least not publicly, but the way people whispered, I could tell the news had spread. The idea of facing them both under one roof made my stomach twist, but something inside me wanted to look them in the eyes again. Not to fight, not to forgive, just to see them for who they were now. When I walked into the house, the chatter dimmed for a moment. People tried to act normal, but their eyes gave them away. My cousin Rachel hugged me a little too tightly. My uncle patted my back awkwardly. Everyone knew. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew. I saw Alex first. He was standing near the back garden, talking to a couple of relatives. He noticed me and straightened slightly, his usual confidence flickering for just a second. Then I saw Sunny standing near the kitchen, holding a glass of wine, her face composed but pale. It was like watching a strange play where everyone knew their lines except me. I took a slow breath and decided to walk over to Alex. I wasn't sure what I was going to say, but I knew I couldn't keep avoiding him forever. When I reached him, he nodded once. Vic. Just my name, nothing more. I nodded back. There was a pause, the kind that stretches too long. So, I finally said, this is it, huh? Family drama in real life. He gave a dry laugh. Yeah, it's complicated. No, I replied. It's actually pretty simple. You made your choice. She made hers, and I have to live with it. He looked at me, searching for anger, maybe expecting a punch that didn't come. I never wanted to hurt you, he said quietly, but I'm not going to apologize for how I feel about her. I held his gaze. I don't want your apology, Alex. I just want honesty. Something you too should have given me from the start. He nodded, looking genuinely regretful for once. Maybe it was real, maybe it wasn't. I couldn't tell anymore. I walked away before the moment could turn into something else. Sunny approached me later that evening. I felt her before I saw her. That scent, that quiet presence. Victor, she said softly. I turned to face her. For a moment, everything around us blurred. The laughter, the music, the clinking glasses, and it was just her and me, like it used to be before everything fell apart. I didn't expect you to come, she admitted. I almost didn't, I replied. She took a small step closer. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I'm not asking for it. I just need you to know. I did love you. That was real. Her voice cracked on the last word. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the urge to argue. I just felt tired. I know you did, I said, and maybe part of me still does. But love doesn't erase betrayal. It doesn't erase choices. She looked down, tears gathering in her eyes. I wish things had been different, she whispered. So do I replied. We stood there for a few seconds, not as lovers or enemies, but as two people who shared something once and lost it. Then I stepped aside and walked past her. There was no grand speech, no dramatic ending, just quiet acceptance. That moment was the closest thing to closure we were ever going to get. In the weeks that followed, something inside me shifted for good. I started going to the gym again. I spent more time with Jorge. I picked up my guitar after years of leaving it to collect dust in the corner. Slowly, I started to build something that wasn't defined by Sunny or Alex. It wasn't easy. Some nights, the memories still hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, their faces flashing behind my eyelids, and that old anger would stir. But it didn't control me anymore. I was learning to live with it. The last time I saw Alex and Sunny together was a few months later at another family event. They were openly a couple by then, holding hands, smiling, and for the first time it didn't make me sick. It just made me indifferent. I watched them from across the room and realized I didn't recognize that version of them anymore. Whatever they had, it wasn't mine to carry. People often think closure comes with a big confrontation or some dramatic apology, but the truth is, closure is quiet. It's the moment you stop waiting for answers and start accepting that some questions will never be resolved. It's looking at the wreckage of what once was and deciding to walk away, not because you're weak, but because you finally understand your worth. That night after the family gathering, I walked home through the cool night air. For the first time in a long while, my chest felt lighter. Life didn't magically fix itself after that. There were still ups and downs, moments of doubt, unexpected reminders. But I started to see those reminders differently, not as wounds reopening, but as scars reminding me of what I survived. Sunny and Alex became part of my past, not my present. And in that quiet, honest space, I found something I hadn't felt in years: peace. If this story hit hard, like, share, and subscribe for more real confessions and unforgettable moments.